Thank you for logging on to monstergardens.com. Today we're doing our ballast buyer's guide, and this is not an easy one for you growers at home to figure out which ballast to purchase for your grow room. So we're doing this buyer's guide to help mitigate some of the questions the customers have, also mitigate some of the false statements that are made. So what we have here is the Solistech ballast. We've got the Phantom ballast, second. The next ballast that we have is the Grow Up ballast, which is the third. Then we have a Lumitech ballast. This ballast is actually one of the older digital ballast brands on the market. Then we have the Quantum right here. Quantum is the second to oldest ballast brand on the market for digital ballast. And then of course the commercial grade ballast, which is the Gavita. And these are display models for the store, so pardon the little dent here. This was actually one that was crushed in shipment, so that's why it's on display. But let's talk about some differences of these brands. Now, if you do not see a brand that's represented here that you've seen on the market, it is probably a brand that's totally redundant and has no unique features. The only brands that you need to be concerned of as a grower are the brands that are sitting up here on this shelf. There's already redundancy on the shelf, and then we'll go ahead and explain that redundancy to you. So let's go ahead and start with some features. Dimmable features. Which of these ballasts are dimmable? It's important for you growers to know at home. The Solistech is a dimmable ballast that overclocks past 1,000 watts to overclock it to above 1,000 watts. That setting is going to be 1,100 watts. Now we have the Phantom. The Phantom is also a dimmable ballast that has a 50% setting, a 75% setting, and a 1,000 watt setting, but it doesn't overclock. Hydrofarm doesn't believe that you need to overclock a 1,000 watt ballast, and just know that most 1,000 watt bulbs will not operate perfectly with a 1,000 watt ballast that is overclocked above 1,000 watts. Now we have the Grow Up ballast, which actually is a Monster Gardens factory direct product. This is a great ballast. It is the ability to overclock to 1,100 watts as well. It can also dim all the way down to a 50% setting. Now we have this Lumitech here, and this Lumitech also has the dimming capability. Again, we have the ability to go to 1,100 watts, 1,000 watts, 600 watts, and 400 watts. Now what Lumitech tells us is you can plug an appropriate bulb of that wattage type in each of these settings. So you can plug a 400 watt bulb in there, 600, 1,000. Now let's admit this. What the hell does that mean? Why would you be swatching out different wattage bulbs? I don't know. Maybe you received this ballast from somebody else and decided to run a different wattage bulb in your garden. So the whole concept of being able to run a different bulb in each level. But let's just admit that it is somewhat of a unique feature that Lumitech has. Now we have the Quantum. The Quantum has no overclocking feature, but it was the first dimmable ballast on the market. So the Quantum has that full 100% capability. Of course, you can dim it to 75 and then to 50% as well. Now here we have our commercial grade light, which is the Gavita. And the Gavita, this is their 1,000. Now the Gavita is very unique because it has its own bulb that's built for this ballast to run that 1,150 watts. Now we finally have a perfect pairing between a ballast and a bulb, where we've never had that with the brands that we just talked about. Gavita makes their own bulb. It's actually Philips that makes these products, and Gavita is their manufacturing company they partner with. But this ballast has a 240 volt conversion to a 400 volt bulb, which makes it very unique. Better electrical translation, less bulb depreciation, and this also uses a very unique bulb, which is a double-ended bulb, which you can watch other Monster Gardens videos to explain to you the benefits of a double-ended bulb. And let's just admit that the hydro market is moving towards double-ended bulbs solely for 1,000 watt ballasts.
In the future, you will only see double-ended bulbs on all these ballasts.
So again, the Gavita is the commercial grade ballast, and the Gavita has the capability of running its own bulb made by the same brand company, which is a very unique situation because it's a 240 volt conversion to a 400 volt bulb, which equates to better efficiency, better longevity, but you have to have a 240 volt capability if you're going to run a Gavita ballast, if it's the Pro line. So those customers that only have a 120 volt power supply, which is a standard house voltage power supply at their house, and they want to run this Gavita ballast, it's important to know that though it comes at a cost, this Orion One is a product that you can turn your 120 volt power supply at your house as long as you have a dual reciprocal outlet, which just means a dual outlet, which of course is a standard outlet, and this will turn that outlet into a 240, 220 volt power supply, so you can run equipment such as this. Gavita Digistar is coming out very soon, and that will be a ballast that's a little more like these. Or the next feature let's compare on these ballasts is its reset capability, or its internal fuse capability. The Solistech here has an internal fuse reset on the exterior of the ballast. So does the Phantom, which actually has a unique. It's a double reset, so it's definitely has the capability of tripping once and then being able to, if it has to, trip a second time. So it's almost like a double backup, which is great. On the grow-out ballast, there's actually an internal fuse right here. You can use a screwdriver just with this prong to pull out the internal fuse. To pull out the fuse. And this is the fuse the ballast is operating on. Right in here is a replacement for that fuse, just in case the ballast ever goes out. So if the ballast ever goes out, you just switch out these two fuses, you put it back in the ballast, and that's your first line of defense if you have any problems with your power supply. The Lumitech actually has two reset fuse switches similar to the Phantom. So these are actually have the same basic feature as the Phantom, so just as good in quality regarding the reset switches as the Phantom. Here we have the Quantum, and the Quantum is similar to the grow-out ballast, where you use a key just to pull out the fuse. You switch the two fuses, and that is your reset for the Quantum. And here we have with the Gavita ballast. Now the Gavita ballast doesn't have a reset, and it actually doesn't need one, so it's just a little bit different technology. Let's point out another difference in the technology, which we'll start with the next feature of all the ballast, which is air-cooled versus non-air-cooled. Now, the idea of air-cooled ballast is that it blows out the heat from the internal components of the ballast, thus giving longer longevity or greater longevity to the internal components of the ballast. Now, we haven't seen any problems with ballasts that haven't needed to be air-cooled, so it's odd that we have come out with a feature to air-cool ballasts. The theory's there. They do feel cooler to the touch, but they're in essence just blowing the air, the hot air outside of the ballast and blowing it into the grow area anyways. But we have actually seen slight higher defect rate with fan cooled ballast just due to the fans actually going out. Rather than non-fan ballast. So right now at this point in time, after years of selling them, Monster Gardens really prefers non-air-cooled ballast versus air-cooled ballast. But let's talk about a really unique feature that the Gavita ballast has. Now if you've watched our other videos, you obviously know this feature. It has a Gore-Tex plug that will allow heat to expel out of this ballast, but it won't allow moisture in. This is a unique feature to the Gavita ballast. Now next, the Quantum. The Quantum has a fan. So again, it's an air-cooled ballast, a little bit older technology. Here we have the air-cooled Lumitech. It has an air-cooled compartment running through, just as the Quantum does. Again, not as favorable as a non-air-cooled ballast. Now we have the grow-out ballast. The grow-out ballast doesn't have a fan either, so now we have the Phantom. The Phantom is, in history, had a very low failure rate, and it doesn't have a fan cooling it. And here we have the Solistech STK, which is also a great ballast that has had a low failure rate and doesn't have an internal fan as well. So that's another feature that these ballasts have in difference to each other. The plug. Just so you know, the Hydrofarm plug has, Hydrofarm reflectors have their own style plug, and if you have one, you recognize that plug type. Now, they've given you a new feature with the Phantom that gives you both of the common style plug and the Hydrofarm style plug in one, so you no longer need the BAA-SP adapter that you used to have to buy with the Hydrofarm ballast, so thank you, Hydrofarm, we appreciate that. The Solistech STK has a 5-year warranty. The Phantom also has a 5-year warranty. The grow-up has a 3-year warranty. The Lumitech has a 3-year warranty. The Quantum has a 3-year warranty, and the Gavita also has a 3-year warranty. So here we go. Let's talk about another feature, mounting brackets. The Solistechs give us keyholes, as most ballasts do, so we can mount them on the wall by using a screwdriver. Next we have the Phantom. The Phantom actually gives us a really cool mounting bracket. It's almost like a handle, kind of a unique feature to the Phantom. Then we have the standard keyholes that we have on the grow-out ballast, which we have the same feature on the Lumitech. We have the same feature also on the Quantum. And here we have the Gavita, which is cool. It actually holds the ballast off the wall. You might be asking yourself the question, which ballast is the quietest? Well, obviously none of the fan ballasts are going to be quiet. The non-fan ballast should essentially be totally quiet operation. Now, are any of these ballasts strictly more unique than the other? Yes. This Gavita ballast runs the Phillips or the Gavita double-ended bulb, which is a very unique pairing. As you can see up here, here is the 600 watt version of the Gavita, the complete fixture. This is what most of their units look like. This is the 600 watt. So you might be asking Monster Gardens, is there any other unique features? Does one of these Ballast power a bulb uniquely different to another? No. And any company that is out there saying that their Ballast has some unique capability, it might have a slight unique capability if it's tuned to a specific bulb, to one bulb type, but the truth is it's a very minimal difference. Most of these Ballasts to the Next are going to put out within a few percent of the light differences, and that difference could be towards their batches. So just because you buy a Lumitech today or a Quantum today, and you buy one a year from now, they're two different batches. They actually could be slightly off from each other, and that's just the way they make these. So the difference of light output is pretty much all the same, except the Gavita has a unique pairing with the 400 volt bulb and the 240 volt Ballast with their unique double-ended bulb. The other question is, well, there are overclocking features such as this Ballast, this Ballast, this Ballast, and this Ballast have. So obviously they do have a capability of making a brighter bulb, but that does come at a higher expense to wattage because it does equate to wattage with your light output. Growers always call and go, what's the smallest Ballast? As you can see, none of these Ballasts are significantly larger than the other. The fan ballast, which again, the Achilles heel of these fan ballasts is the fan itself, because that's going to be the first thing that's going to go out. But the fan ballasts are obviously going to be the smallest because they don't need to have a larger heat sink, more fins to cool them because they're cooling it with a fan. So the fan ballasts are typically smaller, but let's look at this. This is one of the larger ballasts, that digital size, because it has a great heat sink on it. It's one of the larger ones, and let's look at one of the smaller ones. Yeah, this ballast is almost twice as big, but is it a world of difference between each other? No, not at all. When we worked with this company to make this ballast, it became larger as soon as it went to market. But this is actually a ballast that we helped do with some of the R&D. We obviously came up with the name as well. But yeah, so this Nanolux ballast, this is the smallest ballast on the market. This is brand new, just came out last year, smallest ballast on the market. Let's look at that in between our current Monster Gardens factory direct ballast. The smallest ballast on the market. With the fan. With the fan to make it small, and one of the larger ballasts, similar size to the Solistech, this one right here. Look at the size. So when you're talking about how small a ballast is, let's just admit that unless these differences of size are important to you, let's just keep it out of the conversation. A bulb's capability or lamp's capability to put out light is always going to equate to its wattage. So there really is no cheat with buying any of these ballasts for performance for your garden. Now, warranty might come into play, some features might come into play, maybe some unique capabilities might come into play, but let's talk about why you might buy one of these ballasts versus another. The Solistech STKs are a great price point, and they've had a great history, so this is obviously a great buy. The Phantoms have had a great performance as well, great warranty as the Solistech has, so it's a little bit more expensive. The Phantoms had a great success rate, so it's actually a great buy. Then we have the Grow Out Ballast, which for us, for the short time we've been selling it, a few years, it's been a great ballast. We've had a very low defect rate, and the price point's obviously unimaginable because it's factory direct through Monster Gardens. The Lumitech is also a great buy, a little bit more expensive. I personally would probably lean more to a Phantom or a Solistech. The Quantum's been great for a while, but now they've been outshined by some better brands out there. And here we have the Gavita, which is also a great buy, has some unique features. Again, this has to be running a double-ended bulb, and it has a different reflector, so look up that information. But that pretty much says it with most of the ballast, and that's pretty much our buyer's recommendations for buying pretty much all of the uniqueness of the market with all of these different brands that we see here. Now, there are some different ballast brands out there, and let's just admit that we've covered most of the major factories that have been building them in China, and these are actually representations of the best performance and best brands out of those factories. So here is pretty much the best of the best, and we appreciate you watching the video. Now, there's one thing I'd like to stress about the statement that some of these ballast companies have made. You might have heard square wave, a limit of RF interference. The truth is the square wave is not really proven to limit RF interference. A lot of customers that have ballasts that don't even have square wave, a lot of times will not deal with RF interference. You gotta ask yourself, what is RF interference? These ballasts work at a much higher hertz level, a much higher frequency. That frequency, the hertz, the distortion that's being created due to the ballast, is actually an issue between the lamp cord and the reflector. The longer your lamp cord, the bigger the antenna is of RF. If your ballast has an extremely long lamp cord, and it's a digital ballast, not a magnetic, it's one of the ones we just described in this video, then know that you could have RF interference. But ask yourself the question, why do some customers see RF interference even with these ballasts or these ballasts or these ballasts versus others that have the same ballast? It's because it's an issue that lies in two places. The person creating the frequency, the distortion, and it being picked up. If you're noticing you have RF interference, which could be your television with some static, could be not able to listen to the radio, not being able to listen to your stereo, the radio station, that is also due to the equipment that's picking up the RF not being shielded as well. So it's an imperfect situation due to two sources. One, the ballast, and two, the line that's picking it up. If you're seeing it on your house cable, you might have broken shielding in your coaxial coated line, the black sheath around your cable in your house. If you have broken coaxial sheath in somewhere in your house and you're running a bunch of digital ballasts, you might pick up some RF interference. So the company that was able to completely eliminate, hands down, and make that statement to you that it's true, eliminate the RF interference with their digital ballast, has basically done so by eliminating the lamp cord. And this is it right here. That's it. That is the only ballast that Monster Gardens can state that in no way, shape, or form is going to create an RF interference type of situation. The second part that I want to state is that there are ballast manufacturers that state that their ballast is brighter. There's not a way to cheat making a bulb brighter without pushing more watts through the ballast. A bulb can only be as bright as the watts being driven to it. Do that in this video, but acoustic resonance, the frequency, the wave going through the bulb, not perfectly lighting the bulb. We've stated acoustic resonance. You've seen examples through our videos of acoustic resonance. And let's just admit this. Yes, it does create a less perfect color rendering through the bulb. And yes, it does create sometimes a higher failure rate with bulbs. But let's admit this. Even if a ballast is not perfectly driving a bulb and it is creating a little bit of acoustic resonance, the failure rate that we have seen has not been significantly higher than standard failure rates. It is higher, but it's not like significantly higher, and that's why you still see these ballasts that have the ability to overclock bulbs, because if you overclock a bulb, let's just admit there's no bulb that's really designed for overclocking other than the Philips bulb that runs with the Gavita, and so they're all going to have a little bit of acoustic resonance being overdriven. You might ask yourself one more question. Which ballast creates the most heat? The truth is, that's a loaded question. Because this ballast is going to feel cooler to the touch, because look at these fins. They're huge fins. You're not coming anywhere near the actual heated part of the ballast because these fins are made to cool. Where this ballast, the fins are much closer to the compartment, so it's actually going to feel a lot warmer to the touch. This ballast right here is obviously going to feel much cooler because it has an air-cooled feature. They're all going to create the same exact amount of heat, they're just shedding it off the ballast differently. There's not a way to burn watts or consume watts, translate them at the ballast level, and create a cool operation uniquely with the same type of housing as another brand ballast. Basically what I'm saying is there's not a cheater way for them to make a cool running ballast. If a manufacturer states to you a ballast is cool running, it's somewhat of a loaded statement because it's either cool running because there's a fan in it, which just admit all that heat's going right in the grow room, it's just not on the ballast, or it's cooler running because it has larger heat fins. And so yes, on the surface area it seems cooler, but again, that same heat is radiating out in the grow room, or the ballast is warmer because it has smaller fins on it. And let's just admit that the same amount of heat's being produced, it's just not shedding off the ballast as fast. So there's really no cheater way to get a cooler running ballast into your grow room unless you create some special cooling system that you do on your own.